Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Jeff. Let's get Mike on here. This is Junior Hockey Advisor. Ask Me Anything. See if I can get Mike in here. Should just be a second. Hey, there you go. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, how we doing?
We're getting better at this. Getting better at this. It's not perfect yet, but we're getting there.
I missed the lava lamp I felt like we came out of in the last episode.
Yeah, the lava lamp was not so cool, but we're getting there. New stuff, new ways of doing things. We'll get better every time. All right, let's set the stage for tonight. Tonight, it's yeah, I'm on the wrong camera. I'm over here.
There you are. Hey, Jeff.
I haven't coughed all day. I literally have not coughed all day long. All right, now that's crazy. Okay, so tonight it is all about you. We're Junior Hockey Advisor. We're doing Junior Hockey Live Advisor kind of combined right now, one broadcast a week. And the discussion is about whatever you want it to be tonight. We will browse through some of our discussion group topics, kind of give you an idea of what's been talked about in the past here, or what's going on live with our discussion group right now, which is over 11,000 members right now. So between that, our discussion group, our Facebook page, and if you're following me individually or Mike individually, I think we're close to 30,000 now. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's 25,000, but we're we're up there where you got to take your shoes off to count it. It's a pretty big number. So listen, whatever you want to discuss tonight, it is here for you. This is your show tonight. So we'll put the chats up live here in a second. Mike, how's the hockey world going for you?
It's busy. I mean, these are like the dog days, when you're getting into the last part of, December, January, and February. It's playoff push and, games every weekend. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. I'm definitely feeling the effects of it. So I can only imagine as a coach feeling the effects of it, how the players are doing. So it's a grind.
It is definitely a tough time of year for players. And honestly, the older you get as a player, the more susceptible you are to injury and distraction. So distraction comes into play. What do we mean by that? Girls, jobs, cars. Okay. Maybe if you're a bad boy, some other indulgences. But let's just stay with jobs, cars, and girls. So injury might come into play there a little bit too. So
senioritis,
recovery physically and mentally, when you get to be that, I'd say 14, 15 and above, boy, things get a little bit tougher for parents to control that situation. So,
yep. I think for us too, at this point in the year, coaching a U18 team, you get a group of guys that are all excited about, what their next move is from a college standpoint, going to whatever school and picking their roommates and, getting excited about that. Then you got another group that is all excited about trying to figure out what junior avenue they're going to go down. And you kind of get two different directions going on your team that as coaches, we have to try to keep all together, keep everybody still motivated and whatnot. So it's not easy, but to your point, there's so many distractions that are happening now. You're starting to get into almost graduation for these kids. And, we know how it was when we were kids, and it's time for senior parties and, just the relaxed nature school is at that point.
Schools do their winter proms.
Yep.
I don't know when our winter, homecoming, that even happened at our school where we had a fall homecoming, then we had a winter homecoming for, the winter sport people. Then I remember prom comes up in the early spring here. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff.
Yep.
So, and if the event isn't happening this weekend, it's all the planning for the events. I mean, now you gotta do a whole production just to get a date for the proms these days. And you gotta get a film crew and go out there and
exactly.
hold your boombox over your head outside our window and get it filmed while you're playing some old retro 80s song. Okay.
You got to make a video on that. You got all the videos on how to make a highlight reel and how to get your name out there to scouts. Now you got to put one together for how do I get that homecoming date that I need?
Oh, I'd have to do it all off the movie with what's the movie where they're all in the
Say Anything with John Cusack?
Well, Say Anything for the boombox, but what's the one where they're all in detention?
Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club. That would have to be the theme. You'd have to take all those G-gens and do a movie off of them. So, yeah, that'd be fun. All right, listen, we got comments coming in already. So, Facebook user says hello. Great to see you. We'll put these right up so everybody can see. We're not killing it on comment chat. Oh, so it doesn't play the old ones. Oh, okay. I'm going to leave that up. I've got a list of them right here. Troy says such dramatic music. Okay, we're trying our new platform. It's got lots of music choices. That just happened to be the one that I didn't get a chance to roll around and add a little more upbeat. They got some pretty cool beats, but we'll add our old music back in. You notice we added our intro back in. So as we learn this stuff, we'll get better at all this. So, all right, we got a real serious question that just came in, and let me see if I can throw it up across. There we go.
Oh, nice.
Look at that. Isn't that cool?
That was really cool.
In trades in Null, who are the buyers and who are the sellers? That's a great question. And remember, folks, throw your questions up, get them up on whatever your platform is. You might be on Twitter, you might be on LinkedIn, you might be on Facebook in like 6 different places. You might be on YouTube right now. All you got to do is type in your comments. And if not, don't forget, and before we get to that question, I'll throw this up. Here we go. You never miss a comment. Click on the chat message to display it on the screen. So if you go to Restream.io, if it shows up on there, you can we'll gladly make sure you get added in there. So let's get back to the question we had, which was Jacobs. And no, who are the buyers and sellers? I know what to say on this, but Mike, you start off and to give us your thoughts on who are the buyers and sellers.
Well, historically, the sellers are going to be any of the teams that at this point in the year are out of the playoffs, and usually they are trying to move their age out. So in this case, it would be 2003s to try to get them into a playoff situation, because it's just going to get them more exposure when colleges are watching and things like that. And you'd hope that obviously the teams that are acquiring these players, it's going to give them a little bit of a shot in the arm for that playoff push. So you're going to see the teams that at this point, if you start seeing a bunch of trades from one program, they've pretty much, waved the white flag that, playoffs aren't in our future this year, and we're going to try to get future assets and do right by our older players and get them to a spot where they can make a run at trying to get a championship, but then also to be seen and have more exposure to get their college commitment if they haven't already.
Yeah, you're not going to see too many players that are playoff bound in the North American Hockey League give up an asset that's going to help them win in the playoffs. You may see a team get rid of a key player to pick up another piece of the puzzle. So you might lose a quality player to pick up another quality player, apples to apples. But that's a rare trade at this time of year. The majority of trades, like Mike said, they happen along the lines of, hey, we're not going to, let's see if we can. They do it twofold. Part of it is they really want to do well by the uncommitted players that are in their last year. Those players get a priority on trades, because if I'm not in the playoffs and I know I'm not going to the playoffs, and I've got a guy that season could end in a month, a little bit more than a month, or possibly he could play for 2 or 3 more months and get more exposure. Because remember, as the pyramid goes on through the playoffs, you get more eyes on the playoff games because there's less teams playing. So either if it's live or on video, you're getting more chance to be exposed. And you're playing with a better caliber of team, because they're a playoff team. You would assume that there's better quality players around that age out player that's looking to get into a college. So it's not uncommon to see this happen, and it's a really good practice. And then, of course, teams want to improve themselves for the year after. So it's usually for a draft, or it's usually for a tender in the future. Sometimes it's for a younger player. You'll see them trade a 20-year-old for a 18-year-old, and that happens too. In fact, that happens quite often. But I don't know, Mike. I say it probably leans more towards the draft picks and the tenders than it does than a flesh and blood trade.
Yeah, because in front of me on that. Yeah, the player still has some leverage in that situation too. So that's why sometimes player for player doesn't always work out, because with all the options these players have with going to different leagues and whatnot, if a player that's on a playoff caliber team is going to get sent to a team at the very bottom of the standings that doesn't have a history of moving players on, the player that's in that deal may say, I won't report or I won't show up or whatever, and that kind of like nixes the deal. So usually if there's a younger player involved, that player may not have been in the lineup or was kind of in and out, and this is his chance to play. So if there is one player for player type of deal, everybody agrees to that trade, players and organizations. And that's why a younger player might want that opportunity, because he gets to play and start developing and things like that.
Yeah, Jacob, I'm not up on today's trades. I see you put in there Springfield and Bismarck trade is a great example. Throw the notes up a little bit about the trade, and we'll be glad to discuss it. I'm just not going to look it up while we're in a free flow, open forum, answer the questions of the people, because we're all about the people today. We're all about trying to get these questions. And I think we hit that pretty good, but I'd still like to know, and we can chat about that. Let's jump out to another question here. And I'm going to take those off the side so we can look at this one. My 07 was asked to play in the EHL Premier and is afraid of missing out on his senior year. What should I say to encourage him to play in the EHLP? Oh, Danielle, that's a great question. You want me to go first on this one, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
I grind on this one because you may see an opportunity. You may see something as a parent where you're going, that's the right move. That's the right move. Now you can open up a player's eyes by having others coach, a reliable source on the outside of the family unit, yourselves, other siblings. You can all, pipe in and give them a little information and an opinion. But boy, oh boy, if the burning desire is not there to play juniors because of other outside interests, that's a tough one. That's a real tough one. I, as a coach, general manager, owner, have had very little success with players being 100% committed to juniors when they're worried about prom and they're worried about homecoming. They want to be a part of the float committee to build the homecoming float. They want to be an editor on the school paper, or they just want to go to their own high school in general. All those things. If it's not in the heart to go, if the first answer is, hey, you got an offer, and he's already saying yes before all the information's out, that's the drive and the sacrifice that a player should want to make to play juniors. I'm not saying they can't do both. There are some local teams that you can play for, and you can still have a majority of your high school events intact, because most junior teams practice early afternoon or mid-afternoon. For the most part, you'll see some tier 3 teams that'll practice later in the evening. Most of those, though, are accommodating to a local high school player. But boy, oh boy, Danielle, from my perspective, if it's not already a burning drive to jump to juniors, and the player sees that is a real advantage for his own personal development and growth and adventure and a sense of excitement, that's going to be a tough one to overcome. So, Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'll just give my personal opinion on it. Like when it comes to junior hockey, I'm not a big believer in having a kid that's still in high school move on to play high school or move on to play juniors while they're still in high school, for a couple different reasons. Number one, unless you're in the USHL, where like almost the whole team is still in high school, and they have things set up within that program where all the kids are taking online courses or whatever it is, you're going to go to a team that has a lot of players that are 20-year-olds or 18, 19-year-olds, and they're out of school. So when practices are over and they're going golfing and they're going to, Chipotle for lunch and they're doing all these other things, and you have to be that one kid that says, well, I got to go and try to log in and do my classwork, or I got a project that's due on Friday. And there's all these things that is a very, that's a big load to put on a player when he's the only one really having to navigate it on his own. So if you live locally and, the schedule works out, it's a little bit different, but in general terms, when it comes to junior hockey, I would say maximize your youth and high school years. And when you're done with that, then advance to juniors, because there's just too many pitfalls and and bad experiences that kids have where their grades start sliding, or things start happening and outside of hockey, and it just doesn't work the way that you think it's going to work. So I don't know how
that's a great point. I fully agree with everything you just said, Mike. I would add one thing though, at the beginning, that there's kind of a crossroad on, some players don't have organized 16 and 18, 15, 16 and 18 in their high school programs, either are club or non-existent. So there are some opportunity, or there is a need for tier 3 in a lot of parts of the United States. So
that's true.
Yeah, I get it if you've got to make that jump, but boy, oh boy, making that jump without completely being bought in, from my perspective, is a difficult situation. And hey, there's probably, he's got a lot of time yet. In other words, you've got what, 10 months, 8 months before the season starts next year. A lot of things can change in perspective. I'd let this year play out a little bit. I would, continue to leave it on the table as an opportunity. But boy, oh boy, if there isn't a bite there, if the fish ain't biting, I don't know if I wouldn't be throwing the dynamite in the water to try to, catch that fish, Did you like that one, Mike?
I did. Yeah. That's really nice that you laid it out like that.
You can borrow that at any time. All right, let's get on to the next one. All right. We've got, RJ says, is it beneficial for a younger 15-year-old to attend a null pre-draft camp, with the league being known for an older league? Who's up? You're up. You're up. Go ahead and take this. Mike.
Yeah, I can jump. So if this is a league combine, meaning it's the NA combine and things like that, in many cases,
answer it for both. Answer it for both, for an individual.
Yeah, I will. So when it comes to the league, when they have those combines, in many cases, they will have it kind of sorted out by birth year. So it's not like a 14 or 15 year old kid is going to be going against a 20-year-old in those combines. They'll kind of have like a group that could be like 14, 15, 16, and then 16 through 20 or whatever. So that way it's a little bit more age appropriate. So those are a little bit of a different animal when you talk about, is it beneficial or not? Because anytime you go to these combines, there's a way to play in them. And it's really important for kids to kind of understand, how do I show well in these types of environments? And what I mean by that is, number one, you're playing on a team that basically has kids from all over the place. Sometimes you're playing with two guys. If you're a center, you're playing with a left wing and a right wing that you've never played with before. Everybody's coming from different systems. You might even have different players on your next shift. So you're constantly just in a state of, kind of like a ragtag spring hockey type environment, where a lot of bad habits and a lot of things that don't necessarily show well to scouts start popping up in those type of events and those type of settings. So right. Learning how to navigate your way up and down the ice and make the right type of plays and showcase your talents is a learned experience. So to do these events before you're in a situation where you're like, I have to show well because this is my last chance to try to make an impression or to make a team. That's a lot for a player to have to go into that environment for the first time and understand what to do. So for a younger kid, you can kind of see, well, what are the older kids doing? Not only from how they play on the ice, but how do they prepare? Maybe what their bodies look like. Because if you're maybe a thinner kid and you haven't really hit the gym, and you're looking at these kids that, they're solid, they're almost men at this point, you might say, wow, I got to spend a little bit more time putting on some bulk and getting into the gym because I'm just not strong enough. I may skate as well as they do, but I'm not strong enough and I'm not heavy enough on the puck. So it gives you some insights on what to do over the next coming years or seasons that you wouldn't have learned if you just kind of continued to play with your own team and your age group and different things like that. So, and again, that's from the league combine. When you go to like a actual team's pre-draft, that's all ages. So if you're a 14, 15, even a young 16-year-old, and you're going to be going against 20-year-olds, that's a lot to ask. And, you really have to kind of understand what you're getting yourself into in that type of setting, where for us, with what we do, we don't really like to have really young players in our camps because it's not going to be good for them. So we kind of have a cutoff on what we're willing to.
Yeah. And 15 probably is the threshold. I'd say 14 is usually young, and usually it's a seasoned 15-year-old, maybe playing at a AAA 15,
Right.
or playing in one of the higher level leagues. At least for this league now, you're talking about the NOL pre-draft camp. If it's the NOL camp, they're probably going to do a really good job of taking care of the 15-year-olds and the 16-year-olds to put them appropriately in spots. But there's some tricks to the trade that come along with it. Let's say I'm going to an individual one, and I've watched my former players. I've watched my own children go through this. My son would be the most skilled player at 15 in his group, and he'd come off the ice and go, "Wow, I'm staying away from that kid. Oh boy, that kid was big. Oh, that and it would totally shrink his game, and it was a good development to see him go to 16 and 17 and watch his attitude change. Not only as he got bigger and stronger, but as he realized that his skills could carry him past, whatever other players on the ice may have been bigger and stronger. But there's another side to this that comes into play. That emulation that Mike was talking about, seeing good habits, but there's also tricks to the trade. Getting in the locker room early, figuring out, looking at bags, figuring out who's got experience, what programs they're coming from, talking to players, and making quick buddies with players that you think are going to be the more skilled guys in the ice. Okay. Especially here's a little thing. Young left wing comes in and goes up and finds it in warm-ups. It's very clear that the left wing's a decent player. Find that center or right wing and go, if the lines aren't already pre-made, say, hey, I'll feed you the puck. I'll feed you the puck. Can I skate with you? Can we put something together here? Those little side deals like that are great. The other thing too is find out on the bench who's in front of you and who's behind you, as far as is a kid in front of you going to be slow on trading, and work. You'll see the veteran players work to get in front of that group, not behind that group, so that their line stays intact. They always want to keep that line of, once they get to know each other, intact. Those little things, finding out what the other team's sending out and saying, hey, if a lot of times the benches aren't as controlled as you think. So
Right.
those groups of three can kind of set themselves up for success. And the good kids that are veteran players do set themselves, go, hey, you guys can go next. You guys go ahead and go. And they'll send another group of three out in front of them just so they can line up with who they want to line up with so they look better. And that's including the defenseman, because a veteran player on a bench that's not really controlled by the coach much, because a lot of times the coaches are observing. They know they've got 4 lines there, and they know they've got 6D or 8D. And so veteran players will go, hey, it's 4 sets of D, 4 sets of lines. We want to be with those 2 guys, okay? And they'll work it out and arrange it so they're always trying to get in there. Then they'll actually skate up those D and say, don't change early on us. Stay with us. They'll actually make some side deals. You'll see it all the time with better players. So those little tricks of the trade, knowing how to line up with the right guys. In warm-ups, don't be looking around and trying to figure out, oh, look at over there. It'd be a great place to watch a Stanley Cup game from. That's a nice seat. No, you got to be into it. Remember, good coaches look for players that never look above the glass. They want players that their head's inside the glass at all times. When you're on the bench, you look up on the ice, you look back and forth, or you're looking down in front of you. When you're on the ice, everything stays within the glass. So that's a telltale that you're not locked in. If they see you looking up and around and looking for friends, looking to see who's watching you, where your parents are at, your girlfriend, all those are not good signs. So as far as is it beneficial? Absolutely, it's beneficial. Whatever you can do and you feel comfortable doing, because you're going to learn all that stuff. You're going to pick up all the little tricks of the trade, to how to have a successful trout, how to look good. Towards the end, even after my youngest, even when he was playing in the NOL, he's a second-year player in the NOL, and they're going through main camp. You'd see him go out and take a 15-second shift because the bench wasn't being controlled right, and he wanted to get away from the 2 guys he was with. So he'd go out there and make a real quick change just so he'd get on the tail end of the line faster than those other 2 guys so he could pick up with the skaters in front of him. You'll see guys doing that stuff and manipulating things all the time.
Yeah, quick changes.
Yep, that's the things that happen with veteran tryout guys, guys that are used to going, and that happens all the way up through. That doesn't change after you even get to juniors. That happens in the USHL camps. So I hope that helps a little bit. I don't want to kill that one, but that was a great question. Thank you, RJ, for the question. Mike, anything else you want to add to that one, or can we go to the next one?
Well, I'll give two more points to it. Number one, just an example. I had a player that I sent to a null camp and wasn't with our program, so I wasn't obviously there watching. And after the first day, they had played multiple games in that first day, and I'm texting the head coach like, "Hey, how'd my guy do?" And he's like, he's okay. He's just not a great review of him, right? Just kind of, he was okay. And so I talked to the player afterwards, and he was like, "Yeah, I played D because." It was during COVID season. There was like one or two kids on his team that were defensemen that were out. So he decided instead of having like 3 or 4 D, he'd jump back and play D. So he plays 2 games, a whole day of his exposure was playing a position he doesn't play. So it's like, kids think like, hey, I'll help out. We're here for this event or whatever, and we're missing D. I'll jump back and play D. Well, he's not going to show well. He doesn't play D in games, so why would he show well in a camp like this? But they don't know that. It's like, let somebody else do that. Like, you don't do that. Do your best at the position you play so you can get the opportunities you're looking for. I appreciate you jumping back there. If I was the coach, I would appreciate that. But
but that's the one thing about it. If a coach comes to the locker room in general and goes, "I need a volunteer," right? No, because he's not going to remember that you volunteered, or he might not be the guy doing all the evaluation. The assistant coach or it could have been a younger coach from a lower level team comes to the locker room, goes, "I need a volunteer." No, but if one of the coaches come in the locker room and says, "Hey, Bloomer, can you jump on D? We know what you can do as a forward. Jump on D. You're going to help us out, okay? And we're going to note that right now that we're watching you there too. Just get out there and move the puck up and do your best." That's different because the coach came in and specifically looked for you. You jump on those opportunities because then you got something to talk about afterwards. You see the coach and go, "Hey, coach, thanks for the opportunity to play D. I appreciate it. How'd I do?" Now you can start some interaction and have something to talk about there because he owes you a favor. Okay, let's get on the next one here. Look at this one. Kim wants to know, do most all players go to juniors before going to college? What's the percentage of players that go straight to college? Is this just the normal path? This is a great one. I got this one. And I'm not going to say hold my beer because I get in trouble when I say that. But this is the situation.
You don't even drink. No.
That's true. But in the hockey world, that's not a good thing. I am less trustworthy to new people because I don't drink beer than if I drank beer. I'm not kidding you. It's always
I drink enough for both of us.
That's true.
I actually don't. But we'll pretend that.
Compared to my level, you do.
Right.
Okay. So let's start off with, we'll go through all 3 levels. We'll go through D1, we'll go through D3, and we'll go through ACHA. And D2, I'm going to treat it just as D3, okay? In this situation, maybe treat it as D1. There's only a handful of D2s. They all play in the same league. They do give scholarships, but it's a very tough level to play at when you say D2 because you're not playing for nationals. You're only playing a very small handful of teams over and over and over again. And you find that most players are detracted by that. Anyway, I don't want to get caught on that. D1 players, 100% play juniors. Okay. Let's share a screen. Let me pull up something.
Not all 100% have to go in at 20 though. That's the difference.
Yeah, that's a true statement. But we're gonna go over here, and I'll pull this up, and we'll pull up that, and we'll share the screen, and we'll just go through it together. Okay, let's just do. We'll do NCAA. Okay, we're gonna start off with Division I, and when I pull this up.
You still got Anthony Noreen on there, huh?
I like the guy.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course.
He's just, I don't know how to change that. It just always does that. Okay, so what did you do here? Let's do that again. NCAAM. No comments about me not knowing how to work technology. I got a slow screen because we've got all this stuff up. So let's drop that right away.
You might want to take that question off the screen so we can see more of your screen.
I can do that, I think. Yeah, I can hide that. Okay,
you
so
go.
you can see my screen now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So now tell me if anything wacky happens because I'm on this. Now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to grab the players' stats, the green button below that. Remember, I'm on the preferred elite prospects or whatever they call it, the
Premium.
Premium. There you go. Preferred premium, whatever it is. Okay. Now, right at the top of the premium filter here, I can go up here and I can put in different things here. So what I want to know is I want to know if there's any players, what their experience level is. Now, our basis of players here are 1,600 forwards. We're just doing the forwards. We're not doing goalies. When I say forwards, I mean the 5 skaters. So when I go up the top here, I can go to USHL and see how much have USHL experience. And I pull that league up. Basically, what I can do is I can look for players in this, and I don't have to even go through that. Let me explain it first before we do that. What I can do is I can sort out and look to see if there's any players that don't have. I'm looking at all the NCAA and see if any of them don't have junior experience. So if there was a way to pull up all junior leagues, I could. And it used to be because we had junior level tier 1 and junior level tier 2 and tier 3, and they're all USA Hockey. So once again, I can pull up all the different junior leagues here and check them out to see where the players are coming from. And what you'll find out is that about 99% of the players on this list right here, and let's just do the USHL because I pulled it up and I don't want to make it sound like I am trying to hide anything. There's the USHL. I hit the filter here, and you'll see that there are 831 players that played in the USHL. And I can do that for the NAL too. And you're going to find that if I do that with a NAL and the BCHL, and let me pull up the NAL, because you'll see that we're going to basically crush this. And I'll show you one other way to do this. This is kind of the backdoor way of doing this. Okay, now you see here, we've got the NAL up, and you'll see that the amount of players coming from the NAL are 561. So that have at least NAL experience. Now there's crossover there, but if I throw the BCHL in there too, and I'll throw that in real quick, you'll see that the number, you combine those 3 numbers, it's going to be well over the amount of number that's actually playing in NCAA hockey. I hit the all-star team, didn't I? Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. I can fix that. So if I hit that now, you'll see the number of players that have BCHL experience. That's probably about 500, I'd say, maybe more. 400, 387. But you see that number, add those 3 numbers together. It's more than what's actually in the NCAA because there's crossover too. A lot of those players overlap. But you throw in the other leagues too, the rest of the AJ, and you throw in the NCDC, and you throw in the rest of the CJHL, you'll see that number is extremely high. There'll be over 2,000 players. Let me take that off. There'll be over 2,000 players that are listed, and that's because of the crossover. But you'll rarely find a player that doesn't have NCAA experience when you go there. Now, junior experience. Here's the logic. Let's talk about tier 3 again. Same thing. You're going to find out that the number is extremely high on players playing at that level too. If you look for NCAA Division III players and you go junior league by junior league and you try to find a player that does not have junior experience, they're just not that common. you get 1 or 2 a year, and I'll filter it. I'll put something on our discussion group that you can actually see the process where you can pull the list. A little hard to do this way because I have to go through each league individually and count players and then mark them off, and I've done that routinely over the years. You'll see none at the Division I level except that rare player coming out of our NCDC program, which is still considered U18 or U17.
Not NCDC, the National Team Development Program.
Sorry, that's why you're here. Keep me honest on this stuff. You come out of the National Development Program, you've got players that will bypass juniors, even though
they are playing juniors, though.
They're playing juniors, but they're still playing on a U18 team. So that's where you'll see a player or two that will go straight to D1. You'll even see players that come straight out of NCDC and go right to the NHL. We had one of the Hughes brothers do that 2-3 years ago.
You keep saying NCDC.
Sorry. National Development Program. Sorry.
They're going to have that on their website, the NCDC website. Yeah. Straight to the NHL, baby.
Straight to believe me, they will quote that because they do that sometimes. I hope that helps a little bit. We kind of jumped around a little on that one, but
one thing I'll say too is when it comes to NCAA D3, that's when you do see sometimes the prep schools out east will have a kid that will go directly from prep school, maybe play his PG year at prep school, and then he'll go to NCAA D3 with kind of bypassing juniors. So it happens
very rare, though. Not anywhere as common as you think. It sounds good, but it just isn't as common. You talk to most here's the logic. If I'm a D3 coach and I've got the ability to bring a guy that's going to turn 21, sometime before he actually steps on my campus, most likely, unless he's a November or December birth year. Okay, before he gets to my hockey team, he's 21 years old. He's got his partying done for the most part. He's, alcohol's not going to be a new thing that's going to be, ooh, I can drink now. I'm hanging around with all these 21-year-old hockey players. You don't have any of those issues that you'd normally have. Most of those have been, not all of them, but most of them have weeded out, okay? You got a kid that's fully mature physically and a lot more mature mentally. And most likely, if he's been in juniors, he's got a few college classes under his belt, and he comes in as a more disciplined student. You add that up to an 18-year-old that hasn't had a license to drink every night of the week if he wanted to. He hasn't had a license to be independent every single night like a junior player has. All those little things get, they're already tested. They've already been vetted on all that stuff. And it just and they're bigger and stronger. And when I mean bigger and stronger, an 18-year-old to a 21-year-old as far as physicality, even a thin 6-foot player is going to put 20 pounds on in that period of time of muscle. So they just aren't going to lean that way unless it's a rare opportunity. But the number is well in the high 90s, even at the D3 level. You just don't see it that much. And there's going to be somebody that'll pop on and go, oh, I know Bobby, and Bobby did it. And yeah, there's going to be somebody out there that does it. Okay, but the most part,
I got a player that did it.
Okay, great. See, you're that guy. You're that guy.
I was the one making the point. You made the counterpoint. So
yeah, there's always that guy out there. You can't get away from him. So good, very good question. Thank you so much. Let's see what else we got. Just so it gets up here, Jacob did share the Springfield traded an Air Force 03D commit to Bismarck for an 05 defenseman assets. Yeah, I would expect that's exactly the way it goes. Okay, let's see what else we got going on here. Troy says, my 17-year-old plays NA3. You're spot on. Mixing online school with juniors isn't easy. It's a tough mix. Plus the cost of online school needs to be put into play as well. That's absolutely true. Sometimes, though, because parents, do private school at home, when they send their kids off to juniors, the junior bill and the online bill are actually cheaper than the private school back home. So, it can go both ways. And I can see some parents that like to push their kids into junior. Hey, you got a junior and senior year. Let's go to the juniors. Yeah, you go play. Go to Alaska. That's fine. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Hard to sift through all these. All right. Keep your
You must
questions
be
coming.
going
A lot of these are
through.
just comments saying hello and chatting a little bit. So I'm gonna, while you're talking, Mike, you're gonna find something to talk about. I'm gonna check our other boards real quick and see if we've got anything coming in on the other boards. I think we're getting better at getting them combined onto one, because I can see some coming in from LinkedIn. I see some coming in from YouTube. I see some coming in from Facebook, but not all of our Facebook is coming on. So, but we're getting better.
I was going to say, I think you've been stalling just now because you were going through all the different praise comments on how well I'm doing, and there wasn't enough from your standpoint. So you had to keep shifting through to find where that compliment is coming in for yourself.
Yeah.
No.
Whatever you keep you build the narrative that you want to live by, right?
Yep.
And that's okay with me.
Well, I'll go back to one comment on those combines or pre-draft camps that we didn't talk about, just from a organizational standpoint. Anytime we have kids that, doesn't matter what age they are, when they come into our camps and they impress, if it's a younger kid, all of us teams have databases where we house the players that we're going to be watching. We sort them by birth year and things like that. So even if a kid is young and maybe they're 3 years away from playing in the North American League, we're going to put that player into our database, and we'll continue to keep monitoring him and watching his progression over the next year or 2 years or 3 years or whatnot. So it's one element that, even though he's young, all of us evaluators can see where talent is and see where maybe he might project in 2 to 3 years. So we're going to keep tabs on him. And a lot of times the kids either, explode, and next thing you know, they're not even options for us, because at the North American League level, some of these kids end up in the USHL. Sometimes they completely plateau, and there's groups of people even on their own team that end up passing them up. And it's like, well, that kid at 15 or 16 was really good, but he didn't project the way that we thought he would. And we'll move on. But at least, going into it, he's going to get the experience of seeing how to play in those events, seeing what the other players are like, just seeing how to navigate his way around all the things that come at one of those events. And then also, if he performs well and shows the type of skills that these different organizations are looking for, they are going to continue to monitor him.
Do you want me to just put you on a solo screen and I'll come back in 5 minutes, or?
Well, I didn't know if you were still trying to check all these different websites you have.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you, man. I got that done 3 minutes ago.
Well, I was trying to educate you.
Got a follow-up from Kim. So next, how does the draft actually work? Is that too vague of a question? It's absolutely not a vague question, Kim. That might have been the best question of the night. Always have faith in your questions. There's no bad questions here. They're all good questions, mostly. Unless Mike's asking a question, then we know it's.
I was going to say, there's no dumb questions. There's just two dumb people giving answers to the questions.
There you go. So the draft. So there's different levels of draft. The USHL draft works differently than any other draft. So let's start with Tier 1 USHL. USHL draft is probably the most thorough draft done. Now we're talking about Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 in the U.S., and this includes the BCHL, AJHL, and CJHL levels. They have different forms of player procurement in Canada than we do. We're not talking about the majors. So everybody out there says, well, the majors draft is pretty important. Yes, it is. The Western, the OHL, and the Quebec League. But we're not talking about those. Those are considered pro in the eyes of players in the most part, the players in the United States, because the mindset for most U.S. players are Division I college hockey, Division III college hockey. Now, but let's hold your question, because we missed one big part that we cannot miss before we go on to the draft. ACHA hockey. ACHA hockey, when it comes to players moving from high school directly into, or 16, 18s, I guess, or high school hockey or prep hockey directly into college hockey, ACHA does have a lot of quality players that bypass juniors. So unlike the other two levels, ACHA hockey is much more open to a player coming in. Now, holy smokes, this is something that's is so varied though. And we did a show a couple weeks ago just on the ACHA. I would really recommend going back and doing some more homework on the ACHA. There's quality hockey in there. Now, some will argue, oh, it's just as good as D3. No, it's not. All you have to do is look at the rosters. Most good ACHA teams might have a USHL player on the roster that, for whatever reason, decided to go to that college. They might have a null player or two. I know that I'm following Tier 2 hockey, ACHA hockey pretty closely. And this year, I have a son that had back surgery, was a committed Division I player, back surgery, shoulder surgery. He ended up transferring to a school, that school, wherever that is, that school in the background, the University of Michigan, and following his dad's and mom's footsteps. But so I follow D2 hockey now. He's just playing for fun. There's maybe one other guy that has null experience in their whole league. So there's only two guys. And when you look at the Tier 1 teams, it's not much different. You're not loading up with a bunch of guys that have got major junior experience under the belt. You'll get some, and especially if the school has a reputation for being really good, or some of these schools, Kentucky, 2,000 people every game. UNC, North Carolina, they have a game against their rival. They get 8,000 people at the games. They're playing like in an NHL arena. I think they do play in the NHL arena for those games. So they're, Florida Gulf Coast, way down in Naples, Florida, or just above that. They get nice crowds. They got great teams, and they get some really good Tier 3 players out of juniors. But they're mixed in. And what the point I have on this is they're mixed in with high school kids, usually local to the college, that just want to try out for the team and play. And it happens all the time. So you will get players that low. Mike, you got anything to add to that before we get on to Kim's?
Well, there's all different levels within a level or a division. So, some of the top D1 club teams, almost all of their roster is coming from juniors. But then there's levels within, there's 70 some teams. So from team 1 to 30, you might be talking about they're grabbing their kids from juniors. And that could be NAL, NCDC, NA3, USPHL Premier. They're not grabbing USHL guys and whatnot. But, there's guys that might be in the NAL right now that are getting an opportunity to play NCAA D3 at a ridiculously small school in the middle of nowhere. And they say, you know what, maybe I'll just go and play for Team Ohio, which has a really great following, or Liberty, or UNLV, or some of these D1 club teams that are like premier programs. That's a different animal. But to your point, if you're a high level AA player, high school player, AAA player, you can bypass juniors and for sure play NCAA D2 or D3. And in many cases, you'll have a chance to maybe crack the D1 roster if it's a lesser team without having to go the junior route.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had Mike Hermbrodt on 2 or 3 weeks ago, who he's a Hall of Fame coach, runs it's Illinois State. He runs Division I, Division II, and Division III out of there. And even though it's a smaller school, even though it's academically not on the same level as Ohio State or Michigan or some of these other bigger programs, their teams are much more well organized. There's much more funding from the school because they treat them completely different, because their club hockey program is essentially one of their main sports. And so they get treated completely different. They're not a Division I program. They're not a Division III program. But boy, oh boy, they're serious. They have film sessions, workout sessions. They have year-round programs built for it. So, obviously there are Tier 3 teams not like that. But you move up to the Tier 2 and the Tier 1, it's pretty intense. So anyway, let's get on to the current question, which is how the draft works. I talked about the USHL draft. The The USHL draft is, if you're a first round pick in that draft, you're one of the best players in the United States. They have two different drafts there. They have the futures draft and they have the real draft. But if you're picked in the first round, there's a chance that they'll do something called tendering in the USHL with you. In other words, that team looks at you before the draft and says, we want that kid in the first round. We don't pick until 12th. We're not going to risk it. We're going to use our tender on him and get him off the table before any other teams have the opportunity to draft him. So we're not going to wait around for our first round draft pick. So every team has the ability to use their tender to pull in their draft pick. So you'll see that, and it doesn't happen all the time, but some years you'll see a lot of it. But the tender is a totally different animal when you move down to the null. Tenders are deep. Each team does, unless they trade them away or they use them for some kind of compensation to another team, they use those on players. Every team's going to have around 10. Okay. Now they can have even more. They can trade for more, get rid of a player to get more, but you're going to have 10 tenders first. Then the null draft comes into play in June. Okay. So all those tenders are already set. Then the draft comes into play. The null draft is extremely unique because it doesn't necessarily go in the order that you think it would go in. In other words, you'll see players, and it's usually experienced junior players that are picked in the lower rounds, 11th round, 12th round, 13th round. And you think, wow, I thought that guy was a really good player. Well, he is a really good player. What they're doing is they're making sure they get the players that they need for next year off the board early. In other words, they're prep guys. They're guys that are coming out of U18. And then they might take some long shots later on with some higher level junior players that they think aren't fitting in the BCHL or are not fitting in the USHL and have the potential of dropping down to them, either because they've got some knowledge on the player or because they just look and say, hey, he got scratched the last 8 games of the year and he's sitting in the stands of the USHL, but he'd be a really good player on our null team. So that could happen there. But essentially, the draft gets you locked into a team so you have a favored spot coming into the main camp. Okay, tenders and drafts and veteran players, once they get to the main camp, are all fighting for spots on that team. There is no given. That's the biggest thing I have to stress and reiterate. There's so much emphasis put on drafts. There's so much emphasis put on tenders. They're great. They're absolutely make your life easier because you have a focus on one team now. But you also have to make sure that if you're going to tender, that there's a spot open in your position. If I'm a goalie and I get tendered by a team and I see they've got 2 veteran goalies, oh, great. Those veterans are moving on. I've got an opportunity. 2 or 3 goalies, have an opportunity to make that team the next year. If I see they've got 2 guys that are 1 year older than me or the same age as me, and they both played equally and they both are young and they're not, committed yet, or, they're not in a situation where they're going to move on. Boy, oh boy, I don't know if I really want to, go to that team because the opportunity might not be there unless the coach tells me something on the inside, like, hey, we're going to trade a player, a goalie, or we're going to make a move and we would really like you to fill that slot. Otherwise, unless you have information, you can do your homework on where things fit. The draft's a little bit different. The draft is, once again, it's opening doors to main camps. And Mike, do you have anything to add to that? But the draft's important, but it doesn't mean if you don't get drafted, you don't get tendered, there's still not opportunity to play in the higher level leagues.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that you should, take your foot off the gas if you were drafted or tendered in any case, because there's plenty that end up not making their team coming out of training camp because of whatever they didn't do from the time they got drafted or tendered to the time they got there for camp. Just to kind of break down the USHL draft, because like you said, there's 2 drafts. The first draft, they're actually 1 day apart. The first draft is the futures draft, which is all U15. So this year, that's going to be all the 08s. So not all of those kids, quite frankly, most of those kids that are drafted are not going to make the USHL team the following year. They're going to make it over a series of years as they get older and things like that. They'll still be an affiliate of the team that drafted them. And then maybe after their U16 year, they jump. That's where the bulk of them will make the jump. Maybe not after U15. Then the very next day, these USHL teams have the second draft, which they call the phase 2. That's going to be anyone. They could draft anyone that is playing in any of the other junior leagues. They could be playing U18 AAA, could be playing prep school. Doesn't matter. As long as they haven't been drafted by a USHL team in the past, they're up for this phase 2 draft. So that draft could go 20 rounds. It could go 30 rounds, depending on the program. You know, if you're drafted somewhere past maybe 8, 9, 10th round, you know, again, they're going to have returning players coming back on their current roster. They're going to have, 8 to 10 rounds of futures, kids that are going to be vying for a spot. And then you're going to have 20 rounds of your phase 2 group vying for a spot. So to your point, just because you're drafted doesn't mean you're even guaranteed any type of spot on the team, unless you're a very high drafted pick. Then you got a pretty much, a better shot at it. Then you get into the null, and like you said, it's a little bit of a gamesmanship type draft, where if you think you can wait on a player because maybe there's not as much chatter around a kid, you might wait a few rounds, even though he may be the first player on your board, because you think you could get player 2, 3, or 4, in those first rounds, because maybe there's just been more chatter around that player. He's had more interactions with teams, so you might wait on a player. That doesn't mean if you draft that kid that was number 1 on your board in the 6th round, you think he's your 6th best player that's coming in. You just wanted to get some of the other guys to build around him.
To give you more of a specific on that, to Mike's point, is there's a player in Europe, plays in Germany. I'm making this up, okay? You've been in talks with him. Your scout really likes him from the junior team perspective. Your scout really likes the player. He's high on your board. He might be you might expect him to come in to be one of your better players, if not the best player. But he's very confident that nobody else has talked to him, that he's isolated, and you believe that he's flying under the radar. But you've got a U18 player coming out of Chicago or Detroit that, he's talking to 4 or 5 other teams. You really like him. You really want him. So you might make him your first pick so that you lock him in and get him out of the way before you worry about your player in Germany, because you're risking that, but you have knowledge that there is no other teams that are games. There's no other team scouting or talking to him. So that's the kind of things that you see would happen all the time. The other part of this too is you look at the current roster from a couple years ago. Mike and I, was our first time building a roster together, and the captain of the team right now was one of the last picks in the draft, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't he a low level pick?
I can't remember, to be honest with you, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, I believe he was below 10, and he's the captain of an all team now, and having a real good year and a good experience. So hopefully that helps. Kim, if you need clarification on that, feel free to add another question. We got another one coming in. This is a long one. Okay. I have an 08 son that plays defense. This past year, he had to play AA in Windsor, Canada. He played AAA in the past, but because he has not hit his growth spurt, the coach says that he has everything it takes except size. And I'll have to read this one off the board here so I can read it all. Except size and strength. Next season, we're getting him on a AAA team in Detroit. He is going to the Western Elite Showcase camps, in Calgary in May for experience. Which should we expect? And is it a waste of our time going now, or should we wait another year and let his size come into play? So an 08 would be what, Mike? 08's
U15 right now.
Yeah. First of all, that's U15. There's still a lot of size disparity. That's right in the middle of the kid's growth. You'll see players that are still 120 pounds. You'll still see players 110 pounds, and there'll be guys out there that are 160, 170 already. So U15, if there's a level that's still an equalizing at the AAA, if he's a good skater, I'm sure that the coach is going to give you insight if he can play at that level or not. If you got a AAA team in the Detroit market, which is the Bells, the CompuWares, the Victory Hondas, the Oakland Junior Grizzlies. Who am I missing on that market?
Little Caesars,
Little Caesars.
Bigby.
These teams all have pedigree. They've all had success at some level. What I mean is, they're winning national titles at 14s and 15s, all the way up through 18s. A lot of these have guys that have played in the NHL coaching their teams, or experienced coaches that really know what they're doing. Their programs are vetted. If you can play at that level at 15 and they want you, I don't see an issue. I really don't. I've seen a lot of, going all the way back to a guy named Rocco Grimaldi, seen a lot of great guys come out of the Detroit market that have been under 5'6" and have been real lightweights at the time. So I think the market will dictate it. If you're going to play in that competitive market and they're saying, sure, we'd like to have you on the team, I see no reason not to make that jump into play at that level. Now I'm of the ilk. This is where Mike and I might, our paths might go in different directions because of the perspective we have on hockey. I'm always play at the highest level you can. I'm always, if you can play there and you're accepted at that level and you can succeed doesn't mean you have to be one of the best players on the team. But if you can succeed and be a contributor, I say do it. I say play at the highest level possible. Now, there's other theories that say, be the big fish in a small pond. Yeah, that works to an extent too. But at some point, you got to make the jump. And if he's itching to play at the next level and they're willing to accept him, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to do that. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I want to get into a debate right now on the levels of should you play up or down or whatnot. But I think once puberty kind of comes in and you kind of hit that maturity, right? Because sometimes there's kids that aren't going to grow as far as like their height or anything like that, depending on what mom and dad look like. So the thing I always tell kids that I coach that are a little bit, I would say, shorter, is that it's okay to be short, right? It's just not okay to be small. And there's a big difference in that. You can get stronger. You can get, a little bit more size to you. You can be stronger in your skates, be stronger on your stick, things like that. Those are a lot of things you can actually do that you don't necessarily have to worry about like a growth spurt happening, because it may not happen. And for a long period of time before puberty, you're getting, if you're 8 and you turn 9, you're getting a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. If you're 9 turning 10, you're getting a little bit bigger and you're getting a little bit stronger because you're getting 1 year older. Once you hit puberty, it's what you do off the ice that's going to help you get bigger and stronger and faster and all those different things. So, if he's got that type of dedication, and like I said, if he's not going to ever get to a point where he's got, he's 6'3" and 180 or whatever, that's okay, because you can put in the work and make yourself not small, if that makes sense.
And there's another way to think about it. You go back to the movie Dodgeball. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. And if you go up and play in a big, fast league, like most of the teams coming out of the U15 level in Detroit are going to be big, fast, strong teams. Not all of them are going to be the biggest team, but they're, in general at that level, they're going to have the fastest and stronger players out of the market. And Detroit, those teams, their market is the United States and a little bit of Canada. They literally fill their roster from players that are dual citizens out of Windsor, out of Ontario, out of Quebec. They're pulling kids in from LA. Most of those rosters are multi-state teams. And although it might say Detroit, Michigan, it's because mom or dad maybe moved in and got an apartment, or they've got an uncle or an aunt or a cousin they're living with while they're there. But those are multi-state teams. So if you can dodge a wrench in Detroit, you can dodge a wrench anywhere. And so I honestly think it'll make you a better player. Now,
for sure,
I could be wrong, but I'm usually not.
I think some might say,
nothing on that blue. Who? You?
I would say that. I think there's probably someone else in your house right now that would also say that.
No, she's sleeping already. So,
but she would still say that.
So I can't get. It's funny because once you start when we do these individuals on the screen, it won't allow us to do the overlay over here and show the messages. So interesting. We can either use one or the other. But if you got a question, throw it up for us. We'll be glad to try to answer your question. We're winding down for the night. We've been on for we've already been on for an hour. Let's call it quits right there, Mike. We've answered enough questions and try to help as much as we can to make this a better world and a better place.
Yes, I agree with you. I think everybody is blessed to have us on air.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I came on today. Did that hour of meditation just to get prepared. So listen, hopefully we're looking better for you. Maybe not physically looking better, but the actual live stream's looking better. I hope it's working better for you. Somebody just jumped on and said, this is as close to a compliment as you're going to get, Mike. You got to run with that one.
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I wish we knew who that was from so we could either jab them back or, give them some kudos. But, it's good to be back on air. It's been, 2 months or something. We had a little hiatus. So we're stringing, what is this, 2 or 3 straight?
3 for some of us and 2 for others.
Is that how it went? Am I only on number 2?
You're only on number 2, my man. But,
right.
At least you put quality into it. You come in with your best T-shirt and your best Lions hat, and God bless you.
I'm still a Lions guy, even after that the heartbreaking loss.
We got to start another one just to talk about the Lions. Because there's a great example of great theme, great coaching, great motivation, but live by the sword, die by the sword. You got a guy there that, he rode the wave of making risky calls all year and it went in his favor until he got to the playoffs and they went, no, we're going to notch it up a little bit. Those things don't work as easy when the games really count. And he learned a lesson, I hope. Just like the players,
I don't think he did. I don't think he learned a lesson because it helped them advance past the Rams. And there was other games that by living that way, they sealed the game. So players got to make plays at the end of the day. And the 49ers did, and the Lions didn't.
Well, you're right about making plays because the wide receivers definitely decided to turn off their hands for the fourth quarter there. And that really made a difference. So, hey, folks, thanks so much. Once again, I'm Jeff. That's Mike. This is Junior Hockey Advisor. Please go to our if you want information, our Facebook discussion page, when you go to the page itself, on the left-hand side, I forget what it's called, but we've got it all set up now where you can, I'm trying to jump over here and look at the screen while we're on there. You can go on there and there's a feature called guides. And when you go into guides, we've got a lot of the topics broken down for you so you can, look right at the titles. And if that's not enough, you can jump right onto our Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube page and just scroll through the archives. And what you'll also find there's some actual self-help videos on how to get a junior hockey or how to get an advisor for moving to prep, to high school, moving to juniors, moving to college, how to work with an advisor, things to look for. There's things like we've got some videos on there on how the tier 3 operations work, how their budgets work, so you get an idea where the money goes, so you can really get an idea if it's a money grab or if there's a reality on what the prices you're paying. Just things that'll help you make the decision on what you're going to do with hockey. Remember, we're not advisors. Mike and I don't make a living off of pretending that we're giving you free advice just to try to scoop in behind you and try to get you to spend $5,000 or $6,000 with you. Be careful out there because a lot of things that are called news in the junior hockey world are advisors that are trying to make a living off of befriending you. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It might be a good fit for some of you. Mostly, it will not be a good fit. And when you go through this process, take advantage of sites like this. They can give you great information and help you make good decisions. And at the end of the day, if you're making good decisions, we all feel better. So very good. Mike, good to see you.
Great PSA.
We'll see you next week. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Yep. Have a good week, everyone.